Hello? Welcome to the final Fresh from the Theater review of 2019. Today I'm going to be giving my fresh thoughts on Star Wars, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Where do I begin? Well, the first year I started doing these Fresh from the Theater reviews, I did a vlog for The Last Jedi. My thoughts on that were, I liked it, enjoyed it, but I had a lot of cons with it. A lot of pros and cons, and my opinion on The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi has kind of remained the same. I liked them when they came out in the theaters when I first saw them, but the more I think about it, the more I realize there's a lot of problems, and my thoughts on the first two is, they're not great films, but they're alright. And I guess that's kind of the biggest problem. I mean, the go-to defense of them is they're better than the prequels, but they still have a lot of flaws, and this movie, The Rise of Skywalker, I was nervous going into it because I've been hearing a lot of negative and mixed thoughts, and now that I've seen it, I can safely say this is the worst Star Wars film of the new trilogy, and possibly the Star Wars film official Star Wars film I've enjoyed the least. It is not the absolute worst. I mean, that still goes to the Star Wars holiday special for those that count it. I went to this movie with an open mind. I was expecting not the greatest, but I was hoping it wouldn't be the worst, and very quickly things started to turn bad. There was a lot of jumbled back and forth cutting, and the dialogue for the characters felt really high school level-esque, particularly when characters were talking back and forth. There was a lot of bickering, bantering, characters arrogantly going, I'm going to go off and do this. No, we're coming with you. Oh, what are you doing? How do you do that? Just a bunch of rambling and bitching, and it just was grating and annoying, and that was already an issue in the last two films, but it was really upped here. And the story for The Rise of Skywalker, it's a lot to follow, and by the end of the film, and I was afraid this was going to happen, this whole trilogy feels really unnecessary. Like, I remember when it was announced they were doing a new Star Wars trilogy, and my first thought was, really? I mean, we already had the prequels, and that was a big fuck-up, and the original trilogy, it was perfect. It's one of the few film trilogies I can safely say I feel is perfect. There was no need to continue after the way it ended in Return of the Jedi, but they announced it, and because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, I decided I was going to go see it, and I had my hopes up, but each film felt uneven, and now with The Rise of Skywalker, this movie was so bad that I can't believe I'm saying this. Attack of the Clones, the prequel that I considered the most boring and grating Star Wars film to sit through, is easier to sit through than The Rise of Skywalker. And one of the big things I give the prequels is, while they are terribly written, the stories make no fucking sense, and the acting gets really bad as it goes on, the prequels at least had some pretty kick-ass and well-done action sequences. In Rise of Skywalker, we have bad writing, bad pacing, bad transitioning, and the action sequences are really rapid, go by really fast. I couldn't make out a fucking thing. I just sat here looking around going, what the fuck is happening? And it felt cliche, bland, and just overall boring. The action sequences in this film were pretty boring, and before I get too off track, I should probably get into the story. The film starts with the classic text crawl, which already I'm starting to get Revenge of the Sith flashbacks with just how jumbled the text crawl is. It immediately says that Emperor Palpatine is fucking alive. And that's not a spoiler. They were giving away in the trailer that Palpatine is a part of this movie, and it's not a case of it's his spirit or his ghost that's communicating with people. Palpatine is fucking alive. Somehow he survived going down the fucking shaft and the Death Star blowing up. I don't know how, and they don't even explain it. It just happens. They just say he's alive, and then they just carry on. They have Kylo Ren meet Palpatine, and Palpatine convinces him to become the new Emperor and to go on a quest to kill Rey. And I knew somebody who, around the time it was announced that they were going to make a new trilogy, he kept hoping that they would bring back Palpatine, that he would somehow survive, and I remember thinking back then, that was dumb, and it's still dumb. I'm sure that guy's dumb ass is just sitting in the theater somewhere going, yeah! But me, everybody, I'm just like, what? Meanwhile, Rey, she is training with General or Princess, whatever you want to call her at this point, Leia, and Rey is, this is not a well-written character in this film. My thoughts on Rey in Force Awakens was she was just a block of wood, pretty much. In The Last Jedi, they gave her more character, more human moments. Here in Rise of Skywalker, the Rey character, she doesn't feel like a badass. She feels like someone who's trying to be a badass and comes off more laughable than tough. Like, I remember throughout the film, whenever she tries to be tough, she just does that, just grits her teeth, and there were actually 2 moments in the theater where I actually laughed just because of how fucking ridiculous she looked. There's one scene where she says to Kylo Ren, "Give it to me!" Just, I can't help it. It was fucking hilarious. And whenever she connects with the Force or Kylo Ren, she gets this blank-eyed stare on her face like... It's just like everything else with her. It's really hard to take seriously because she doesn't look like she's connecting to the Jedi of 1,000 generations. She looks like someone just jammed a lightsaber up her ass and is like, just... It looks silly. I keep saying that over and over, but it just does. I can't emphasize that enough. And Kylo Ren, aka Ben Solo, he's also fucking ridiculous. They put him back in that fucking dumbass helmet that he had in Force Awakens, and I liked in Last Jedi when he took it off and they acknowledged it looks dumb, but he puts it back on and he has that deep robotic voice once again, trying to emulate Darth Vader, and it was just as retarded as it was in The Force Awakens, and every time he spoke with that supposedly intimidating voice, like with Rey trying to act tough, it was just embarrassing and laughable. I didn't take Kylo Ren or Rey seriously until... Actually, I never really did, but I didn't look at them and think I could take them seriously until the last couple of scenes they had, where... I'll get to that with the spoilers, but it was like, why did you wait till the very end to give them some actually decent moments in writing? And why'd you have to come after all this shit? Because now it's hard to really care or get into it. It just... It feels... It's like It Chapter 2 was ending, where these characters have these big moments. There's some awesome shit going on, but it's been after all this clusterfuck writing and direction that makes it just impossible to really get behind. Finn and Poe are back, and as I said a few years ago, they are my least favorite characters in this trilogy. They have been so far. Finn was just annoying as hell in Force Awakens. He was useless in Last Jedi. Here, I'll give it this, he's not as annoying, but there's really nothing memorable about him in any scenes he's in, and it's implied that he might have the Force, but that goes nowhere. And considering this is the last film in this trilogy, and there's talks that they're going to take a break from Star Wars because we've actually been getting too much of that, in my opinion. I don't know if they're going to follow up. I don't think they're going to follow up on that. And Poe, he was in so little Force Awakens, I didn't really have much of an opinion. And Last Jedi, he was a fucking dumbass. Here, they don't have him do as much stupid shit, but he's still arrogant and annoying, and he's like a charmless version of Han Solo, who you could just see getting his ass kicked. And the Rose character, who I fucking hated in Last Jedi, to me, she was more annoying than 10 Jar Jar Binks combined. But they used her in only a few scenes, and they didn't give her much to do or say, which to some people who for some reason like her, and probably Kelly Marie Tran probably didn't like, but you know what? I'm glad. One small example is a soldier comes up to Leia and says that things aren't looking good, and Rose's like, "Do you have to say it like that?" Yeah, Rose criticizes the guy for being so dark and just depressing sounding. I'm like, you're in a fucking war! What else is it gonna sound like? Leia, she is in this, and I was real curious how much she was gonna be in it and how they were gonna make that work, because Carrie Fisher died before production on Rise of Skywalker started. And after watching it, she was in it surprisingly for a lot, and I read that they used unused footage from Force Awakens, and yeah, probably a lot of CGI, and it was impressive, but, and they did as best they could with what they had, but because they're so limited in what they could use, Leia just was, like most characters in performances, forgettable and not used that much here. And like any other actor who's used from old footage or doubles when they die, like Bruce Lee or can't remember her name, the actress who played the mother on The Sopranos. It's a mixed bag. It's mixed. It doesn't come out the way most people would like. One of the few moments I really liked was finally, after 2 movies, seeing Billy D. Williams return as Lando motherfucking Calrissian. And they don't use him that much. He has one scene in the first act, and it is awesome, but then he's like, "My flying days are over." That cliched old-timer says he's done and then shows up at the final act. I'm like, no, no, no. You got Billy D. Williams. Use him right. Don't just bring him on for 5 minutes and then bring him back for 10 minutes at the end. Use him to his full potential. So what if he's 82? He gave it his all in the scenes he had, so why not use him full time? I mean, you used Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill. I was happy to see Lando, but I wanted more of him. There was just not enough Lando in this film. Give it this though, Lando still has the moves. And I'll leave it at that. Just to get the last necessary part of the plot back in, Rey has to go searching for this device called a Sith Wayfinder. Very George Lucas sounding writing there. It's like a compass that helps them find the Sith or something. I might be getting that wrong, but It was a big, long mess of a film, so hard to keep track of everything. And she's like, I'm going alone, and then Poe and Finn and Chewbacca. Chewie's in this again, and they give him more to do in Last Jedi. They're going with her, and there's a lot of, I'm going alone, we're coming with you. You can't do this alone, we're in this together. We're a team. Some characters barging off without telling everybody, making a lot of stupid decisions. That overtired bullshit. And the last couple of things I'll say before I get into the spoilers, because this film gets really fucking off the rails when I get into the spoilers, are the Force with the new trilogy has gotten a lot more powerful, and at first I thought that was interesting, like it was a way of showing how the Force had evolved over the years, but some of the stuff that happens that the Jedi and the Jedi ghosts are able to do with the Force is a little too powerful in my opinion. I mean, we have Palpatine, who's able to cause an entire fleet of Star Destroyers to rise out of the ground and go up into space. In Last Jedi, we had Leia coming back to life while in the vacuum of space. We also have, and this is a new thing that I just thought was a bit much, Rey and Kylo Ren communicate through the Force. Kylo Ren is able to grab a necklace Rey is wearing, and it appears in the location where he is in the real world. Rey is able to put her lightsaber behind her back and get it transported to someone else in a different location. After a while, I'm like, just how fucking powerful is the Force now? It just seems like it's able to do way too much. I mean, with how powerful some of this stuff is, some of the things these characters are able to do, how is there any war? One side with that much power could just squash the other. It's like the tall man phantasm. What are the extent of these fucking powers? Also, remember how it was kind of implied that Finn had the hots for Rey in The Force Awakens and then it went nowhere in The Last Jedi? Well, they have a bad running joke here about Finn almost saying, I love you to Rey, and people keep asking him throughout the film, what are you going to say to Rey? What are you going to say to her? Is it really that important? And they're asking him at a moment where they're about to be executed, so that goes nowhere by the end. And lastly, C-3PO, played once again by the great Anthony Daniels. I like Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, but what they did to him here, C-3PO has always been treated more like a fucking slave than a friend throughout most of these movies. In Revenge of the Sith, they wiped his memory to explain why he doesn't remember anything of the prequels in the new trilogy, and they kind of do the same thing here. They need to access a translation, and by the way, this is another really stupid fucking thing. C-3PO is able to translate a Sith language, but his programming forbids him for some reason to ever translate audibly to others' Sith language. Another thing they don't explain. And in order to get the translation, they have to hack into his head, and it would unfortunately wipe his memory, and part of him willingly agrees for the sake of saving the day. But it's mostly a case of they force him into it, because, I mean, yeah, it would save the day, but I had so many goddamn problems with this part of the film. For a while, I was like, how dare you do this to C-3PO? He has been there through it all. He is more than just a piece of machinery for you to do with as you please, and there had to have been another way. And he even mentions, I might have found another way. I mean, they could have worked hard. There could have been a better way to do it. And the only reason I'm not destroying everything in a rage is because R2 apparently backed up C-3PO's memory to a certain extent and was able to get it back to him. So I'm like, okay, you kinda saved that part. I mean, at least from causing everybody to absolutely seethe for what they did to C-3PO, but they didn't know that he could get it back. The way they treated C-3PO in this was one of the all-time worst things I've seen in the Star Wars franchise. It was bad in Revenge of the Sith, and it's fucking terrible here. Okay, spoiler time, and whoo! This movie went fucking nuts at the end. Where do I begin? Well, first, Rey and Finn and Poe and Kylo Ren end up on what appears to be the moon of Endor that has the remains of the Death Star from Return of the Jedi on it. She goes into it and appears in what was the Emperor's throne room, and she has a vision of herself as a Sith, and she briefly duels with her evil self. Yeah, I can see the metaphor, but it really seems like she's actually there, and like this evil version is actually there, and it's kind of confusing, and Kylo Ren shows up, and this was the only action sequence that I actually kind of thought looked cool, is where they duel out in the ocean on the remains of the Death Star. And Kylo Ren reveals the truth, why Rey has the Force, and why she keeps having all these visions or connections to the past. Everybody thought it was going to be revealed that Rey was related to the Skywalkers. She's not. You ready for this? Rey is the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine. Huh? Yeah, apparently she's the daughter of Palpatine's son, I believe Kylo Ren said, and my first thought, when did Palpatine get a son? She runs away and goes to the island that Luke was on in Last Jedi. We get a cameo from the fucking Porgs, and seems like she's now determined, spur of the fucking moment, to become a hermit just like Luke did. And it's in this span of 10 minutes or so that, okay, first we see that apparently, once again, how powerful is the Force? Rey was able to heal a lightsaber wound on Kylo Ren, like put her hand on him and it heals up. Getting back on track, because I lose track with these fucking movies. We get the two best cameos in the Rise of Skywalker that honestly brought a little life back into this film. We see Kylo Ren on the edge of the Death Star, and we hear Ben, or son, turns around, and it's Harrison Ford as Han Solo. Apparently he's speaking to his father's ghost or spirit. This was the best scene in the film, and it's a shame the rest of the film is so bad because there is some emotion in this. We see Kylo Ren become Ben Solo again, and his father encourages him, pushes him to go forward, do the right thing. He says he's not sure he can, and like he did when he was killed, Han puts his hand on his face and pushes him forward, and it was just a cameo, but it felt so great to see Han again, and it's the best scene in the film. It's one of the few legitimately good scenes in an otherwise shit movie. We cut to Rey on the island, on her destroying her ship, because every new character in this series is a fucking moron, and who should appear but Luke in ghost form. And Luke's scene is not as awesome as Han's, because it's still that curmudgeon, giving up on life type version of Luke that we got in The Last Jedi, but he does push Rey to go forward, and he gets his old ship to come out of the water, and Rey, putting on the classic white helmet with the red symbols, flies off to join Poe and Finn as they go up against the Emperor's fleet of Star Destroyers. And Rey, she goes to confront Palpatine. It's a family reunion, and Palpatine, he's not well written into the story, but seeing Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine again, seeing him in a few minutes go back to his full force, full crazy persona to shoot lightning, it was incredible. Just for a few minutes, we saw the Emperor again. It doesn't tie in well, but like in the prequels, he was given some pretty fun shit to do, and the Emperor tells Rey to kill him and take the throne as Empress Palpatine. And you know what? I actually would have liked that. It would have been the end, and it wouldn't have redeemed the rest of the film, but it would have been different. And she almost doesn't. Then Kylo Ren shows up, and they both fight off the Emperor's cult of followers. He apparently has followers. And he sucks the life force out of the both of them. And Kylo Ren's not fully dead. Rey comes back, and she defeats Palpatine, holding both Luke and Leia's lightsabers, like this, and shoots the lightning back into him. And man, when he went down the shaft, that was such a more epic villain death. Here it's over and done in less than 2 minutes. First it seemed like Rey died, and at first I was like, whatever, I never really felt attached to her, but at least they're trying something different, going for the more tragic angle. But remembering that she healed Kylo Ren, was like, oh wait, I know where this is going. And he puts his hand on her, brings her back to life. And then she and Kylo Ren kiss, because there was so much sexual chemistry in Last Jedi. And then Kylo Ren dies, and that I could kind of see it coming. Rey's death would have been more unexpected, but yeah, they have him die, so that relationship went nowhere. And meanwhile, before and during that, there's a big space battle where Finn and Poe go up against the First Order. And then, when it seems like they're gonna die, Lando appears with Chewbacca flying the Millennium Falcon. Those shots of them are the only good thing in the final battle. Other than that, boring and annoying with all the characters shouting, "What are we gonna do? We can't win this. It's gonna fail." Just bunch of whining. And they win, and we get a few shots of the Star Destroyers all over the galaxy, crashing and burning on various planets, and those few shots I actually liked because it's all nostalgia. We got to see them crash on old familiar sites, including Cloud City, and we saw them crash apparently on Endor, the moon of Endor, and it was only a few seconds, but we saw the Ewoks again. And I'm not like everybody else. I love the Ewoks. So seeing them again, I'm like, ah. So last time I'll say this. There were some really good moments at the end, but it was still a mess, and the fact that the whole film had been a uneven, jumbled ride just made it near impossible to get behind. And Leia earlier had died when connecting with Kylo Ren, and when he dies, he fades away, and so does she. And I should have felt a lot more than I did when Princess Leia, Princess, General, whatever you want to call her, fucking Leia, died. I should have felt so much more. I should have felt emotional, but no. They did it as best they could with Leia in light of Carrie Fisher's passing, but the death just did nothing. And after we get a celebration party, which not as quite as awesome as the Ewoks' little jam at the end of Return of the Jedi, we cut to Rey on Tatooine, burying, because that's the best idea, Luke and Leia's lightsabers deep in the sand. And we had one scene earlier where she was asked what her last name was, and she, on the verge of tears, because we didn't get enough fucking tears in this film, said she doesn't have one. And she's asked here, as she's burying the lightsabers, what her last name is, and Rey looks at the ghosts of Luke and Leia, and she chooses to give herself the name Skywalker. And I'm like, nope, 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 nope. You are not a Skywalker, and you certainly have not earned the right to steal their name. And ending on a cheap imitation of the iconic shot of Luke looking at the two suns just feels like an extra fuck you to anyone who loved the original trilogy. People give Rian Johnson shit for what he did in The Last Jedi, and yes, there's a lot of problems with that film, and there are some definite non-Star Wars moments, but this ending just felt like an extra punch against the face. And J.J. Abrams, he came back after Colin Trevorrow left the franchise because the higher-ups at Disney and Lucasfilm did not like his ideas for Episode 9, and after seeing Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I don't blame them for not wanting to bring this motherfucker back on. But bring on J.J. Abrams, the guy who does not have a good track record with ending franchises, Lost, was probably not the best idea. I mean, some people say he did a good job Force Awakens, but it still had problems. And the co-writer for this was Chris Terrio, who, on the one hand, won an Oscar for co-writing Argo, but on the other, co-wrote Batman v Superman. So, yeah, not the best story and character writing. The editing was a mess. And the only two things I'm really glad about with the ending of this movie is that they didn't kill off Lando and Chewie, because if anyone's gonna make it, it's gonna be Fuzzball and the coolest black man in the galaxy. The new trilogy, in my opinion, was very unnecessary, and I'm pretty sure that in 30 years this is going to be the least memorable Star Wars trilogy. I mean, as awful as the prequels could get, no one forgets them. And the original trilogy, it is a masterpiece of a saga. I know I've said this many times, but it really changed the way films are made and the way they're marketed. It created some of the most memorable characters of sci-fi and action who we still hold high today. And this new trilogy, it was uneven, the first two films, but I still stand by that Force Awakens and Last Jedi were alright. Nothing special, but alright. Rise of Skywalker was bad, and I honestly would watch each film in the prequel trilogy again in a row. then jump back to check this film out anytime soon. Only really positive thing I can give it, they could put in quotes, are, it's not the Star Wars Holiday Special. So those are my thoughts. I could probably talk about a few other things, but I'd just be dragging this video on much longer than I already have, and I know if you are a Star Wars fan, you're definitely going to see this, and there have been a few people who've liked it, and if you did, more power to you. But me, I didn't like this, and seems like the majority of the people I watch and listen to didn't either, and I feel like this new trilogy could have been so much better than it ended up being. I hope you enjoyed my final Fresh from the Theater review of 2019, and I will see you again soon in 2020. New decade of movies. See what it has to give us.